Hey everyone, this is Clara Duran Reed with the Duran Reed Firm Realtors. And today I'm here with Brent Henry Martin, and I wanted to cover some really interesting things about why people are choosing to leave their state, coming to another state, and what are the pros and cons that they see. So, good morning, Brent. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. So tell me, Brent, tell me a little bit about your background and where you're from.
So I was originally born in Denver and was raised in northern Colorado in a small little farming community and couldn't wait to leave there once I turned 18. And so when I did turn 18 and graduated high school, and I hadn't really decided what my future plans were. I had done a lot of photography as a kid and won a bunch of awards, state awards, and doing different things with my photography as a kid. Moved to Seattle and decided to pursue something along the lines of photography. And I did. And I moved to Seattle, which is where I say I'm really from, because I lived in Seattle for nearly 30 years, 29 years. And so
most of your life.
Most of my life, yeah. And so I moved there and was working in photo finishing and doing some freelance work in photography. And I'm from Seattle, and I needed the change, and I fell in love with it. It was kind of a good time. It was 1991. It was a good time to move to Seattle.
Okay.
Seattle had a lot of cool things going on in 1991 and the early 90s, all the way through the 90s. Really, it was it was the center of the pop culture world, really. So
yeah, it really was. So you're no longer in Seattle, and today you're in.
I live in Los Angeles.
Okay.
I wore my Dodger hat today.
Yes, yeah. I saw that. So you're officially a Los Angelino.
I'm officially an Angelino. Yeah. I love baseball. And so I used to be a Mariners season ticket holder, and I love the Mariners, but you can have an American League team and you can have a National League team. So I had chosen the Dodgers as my National League team. So
cool. So now, what made you leave Seattle for Los Angeles?
So there was a lot of factors. My wife's originally from Los Angeles. She grew up here. We met in Seattle. She had moved to Seattle for her career and was working at Nordstrom as a corporate designer, and then left that job and started her own agency, and then has been working as a creative professional for the last 15 years. So we met there, and we would travel here, and we would spend, her parents, before they retired, were still living here, and we would come down every 2 to 3 months just for a little extended weekend or whatever. And
right. So you got to know the area.
I got to know the area much better.
Yeah.
And then we decided we should look at moving. And one of the reasons that we looked at moving was that we were closer to her family. I didn't have any blood family in Seattle.
Okay.
I had, my son graduated high school and he went off to college. I just didn't really have anything tying me down there. But ironically, one of the benefits of moving to LA from Seattle is clearly the weather. The weather's right. Far superior. But, the traffic in Los Angeles is easier to navigate.
So you think that the traffic in LA is actually easier than in Seattle?
Without a doubt, scientifically, it's without a doubt easier to navigate.
Yeah, that's
Seattle is,
because I think a lot of people probably wouldn't know that.
They wouldn't know that, or and even people even my friends in Seattle, when I tell them the traffic in Seattle it's untenable, mm-hmm. They still don't understand. They're like, oh no, Los Angeles is the worst, and I said, no, it's not, and as long as you keep believing that and don't move here, then that's fine, Right. But the housing pricing is about the same.
Okay.
But the traffic is such that, Los Angeles is such a big city and has understood that it requires moving people around. And so that when the infrastructure is built, it's meant to move a large number of people around. Seattle is just now starting to, even after growing as much as it has grown and changed. I think Seattle, in the time that I was there, I think became 3 different cities in the time I was there. It was really, has grown a lot, but nothing has changed on the infrastructure.
Interesting.
And so you have very small, narrow streets. Imagine your neighborhood street in Los Angeles is a little bit as narrow as the roads in the Hollywood Hills.
Yeah.
So it's really narrow. People park on both sides of the street. People park the wrong way on both sides of the street. So you have cars facing each other, and you have to parallel park uphill on the other side of the street.
Those are things that you noticed right away when you came over here.
Yeah, there's so much, like everything's so much. There's so much more room, and in Seattle,
it's better planned for larger communities.
It is, because Seattle is built around water. So you have salt water to the west, and you have 2 freshwater lakes, large freshwater lakes that border the city. One on the east side, and then there's one that's kind of in the middle of the city. So you have all of these strange little peninsulas that are really big hills. So it's really similar in topography to a San Francisco, but smaller. So now you have all of that going on, as well as, there was a time, I don't know what it is now, but a few years ago, you had 10,000 people moving to the Seattle area a month.
Wow.
Because of Amazon. So you have all of those people coming in without the infrastructure. And so, yeah.
Facebook there as well.
Also, yeah, those are also there, as well as, of course, Microsoft. So it's one of those things that the city hasn't really grown to fit its current size. And it really hasn't come to the realization that, we're not just a little tiny burg anymore. We really have to figure this out. And there's a lack of leadership around that to make that happen.
The planning department and the city council have a lot to do with that. So very important as to who gets voted in on those.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we face some challenges here also in Rancho Palos Verdes over time. So it's always interesting to see the people who come onto the planning commission and the city council and what their ideas are. And really, we as voters have a big say in what happens to our infrastructure and everything on the peninsula.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's the same thing everywhere else. I used to be on the planning commission here.
Oh, were you? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was one of the things I was really looking into was, really to improve the city the best way possible. So you like the fewer traffic, housing prices are about the same.
About the same. Weather can't be beat.
The weather. What about other things? You said that the pricing was about the same. So I guess that just really depends on where in Seattle, because you have Bellevue, which is probably going to be much higher, right?
No, Seattle is still, depends on where you're at. Bellevue will have newer buildings, and of course anything along the Lake Washington. So Lake Washington's between Bellevue and Seattle. You have larger homes in Bellevue. I guess, not being a complete real estate professional like yourself, I can say that there's going to be high prices on both sides.
Right.
The newer construction is generally over in Bellevue.
Right.
And the stuff on the housing that's on the Seattle side is going to be some of the older homes, although there's still new properties being built all the time. But to generalize, I would say newer constructions on the Bellevue side, and then some of the older homes, the older mansions and things from the early part of the 19th century are on the Seattle side. But
okay, good. Well, I'm going to include a little link right here on another video that I did on reasons to move to Seattle. So this is a good video for people to see the opposite side, right?
Right.
So how's the wildfire smoke over there?
The last summer I was there, it was really bad, and it has not gotten better recently. Of course, that all depends on if and when there's wildfires. The last summer I was there was the summer of 2019, and the wildfire smoke was really bad, to the point where it was choking bad. Whoa. So wearing masks and things, it was just super hazy, and it looked like you were, and just walking around town or just being outside was really surreal.
Yeah, that's too bad. That's very unhealthy. No, my husband lived in Seattle. And one of the things he really wanted after living there was to move to California to find a nice sunny location. So
Yeah.
what he did is he looked for engineering companies that were near the beach.
Yeah, there you go. I totally get that. Yeah.
Yeah, so he found one and just like really focused in on that, and then that's where he ended up living, is by the beach. And then we moved to Rancho Palos Verdes, but that's another story for another time.
Yeah.
So, how is the construction over there? Are you getting a lot of construction in the city?
In Seattle we say that the city bird is the crane. So, when I left, and my wife was just there a couple weeks ago. She went back. A friend had a birthday, and so she popped up for a long weekend. I don't know if the construction is the same like this year as it was when we left, but it was pretty amazing. At one point, I remember counting 16 cranes in the skyline.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
that's even more than New York City, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was and when they were in its biggest construction boom, that's also made traffic kind of crazy too, because they were trying to move people around all these buildings that were being built to, put in housing and office spaces for all of the people coming in, the tech workers that were moving into Seattle. And so it just became an overall nightmare with construction. And also there was some other construction going on. We tore down the most beautiful and frankly dangerous driving part of Seattle was the Alaska Way Viaduct, which was this great stacked state highway that hugged around the outside of the city, so on the west side. So you had these beautiful views to the west of the Olympic Mountains when it wasn't raining, and you got these great summer days, and you drive on the top deck driving north, and you just look to the west and you'd see these beautiful mountains, and then the Puget Sound there. But it was really an unsafe place to drive because of earthquakes. Past earthquakes had made it unsafe, and so they tore it all down and they built a tunnel. So there's a lot of
wow. So you went totally opposite. You went from being way above ground.
We went from being way above ground, and then this is my wife here.
So you went from being way above ground to now
they put things underground, and it's it's not as nice, it's faster, it's more efficient. But then they had to reconfigure some of the street traffic and things, and so the construction was just out of control. Yeah.
I wonder if it's still like that now. So how about snow? Does it snow over there?
So it does now and again. You can almost always count on Seattle for one snowstorm a year average. And when it snows in Seattle, it always makes the national news. And it's funny because growing up and learning how to drive in Denver, it's a different place to be for snow. And snow, because like I said before, the entire city's built on a series of hills, and it rains a lot. And the roads are almost always wet. So when it snows, the first thing it does is the rain now turns to ice.
That's a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, so the roads freeze over. And then the snow starts to fall. It gets cold enough that then the rain turns. And the rain that we get in Seattle is often, I used to call it drizzle, because it's like between miserable and drizzle. So it's just like drizzle, and it's just kind of in the air. And so when that kind of dampness, gets cold, it just freezes everything. And so then you'd get snow on top of that. So you have snow on top of ice on roads that are on hills.
Oh.
And so it just shuts the city, an inch of snow will shut the city down. And people are just like, it's an inch of snow, people that don't know. And so they're like, why is it? And it's like, well, it's because if things were to snow in San Francisco, you'd get it. It would just cripple and paralyze everyone.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah, it's very, very dangerous.
And it's not like you could even use like those snow tires, right?
Snow tires and chains.
That won't work.
They don't work. And so you just have to, it's some of the best memories I have of Seattle are snow days, because everybody just takes the day off. There's literally nothing you can do. You're not going to work.
Vacation time.
Everybody gets to, and then that's when you get to really see the neighborhood and people, and you know, there's all kinds of gatherings in the street corner here, or the neighborhood will get together at somebody's house, and the kids are, it's really pretty fun, really
Wow.
fun snow days.
Now,
Yeah,
that was growing up. I mean, do they still do that today?
they do. Yeah, that's the best part about it, is that
So
even
great.
when Seattle snows, I mean, COVID is probably not. I don't know if it snowed last year or not, but I would say that even, in its worst snow blizzards, and I've been through a couple of them, people still get out and they still walk around, and it's really fun. It's
That's
really
so
fun.
great.
Yeah,
So great.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and also as a little kid, that must be really fun too. I just remember my New York days. I was raised in New York, and the snow days were some of my favorite because I didn't go to school.
Right. Yeah. I remember. So I had snow days in Colorado, which were fun, but they were, not very many of them, because you just know how it's okay. The snow is not a big deal.
Right.
But in Seattle, there were times I remember I was working in a bakery, and I lived in Queen Anne, and Queen Anne is kind of like right in the center of the city. Queen Anne is the neighborhood that the Seattle Center is in, and where the Space Needle is. But there's a Queen Anne Avenue is this long, probably 10-block long street on a hill. I mean, the road is much longer than that, but there's a part of it that's on this very steep hill. Mm-hmm. And during a snow day, we just took some of the cookie sheets and we're like, let's go sled with the cookie sheets. It was super fun. Everybody had a great time.
That's funny. Yeah. That's really funny. So now that you're in Los Angeles, what are the things that you like about Los Angeles, and what are the things you don't like about Los Angeles?
So I'll start with the things I don't like, because there's not very many of them. After having been here now for just about a year, I miss the fall.
The fall.
I really do miss that. That's something I'm missing. I'm working on a project in France in a couple weeks.
And we said, yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to a little bit of fall, because we don't really have a fall here. We just have like hot summer and then less hot summer.
And we can always go up into the mountains.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so I do miss the fall, and I miss sweater weather, kind of crispness in the air and that kind of thing. I do miss that. And I miss my friends. That's what I miss. What I love about Los Angeles is there is an underlying feeling of optimism, continual optimism. And the way that I can best describe it is people in the Los Angeles area aren't worried. They don't confer around plans about what is going to be the weather contingent. Even in June, it could rain.
We never think about it.
You don't think about it. You just like make a plan. Yeah, we're going to get together and we're going to go here. Or we're going to go have a picnic in the park, or we're going to go to the zoo or whatever. And nobody's like, well, what if it rains? Like that kind of thing. There was, when we first gotten here before COVID lockdown, our friends had planned a little party for us to like in the park over it. And they're like, oh, let's just have a barbecue in the park. And it's March. And I'm like, well, what are we going to do if it rains? And I had to realize it's not going to rain in March. Like, it's just like, there's a lot of things that could happen in March, but rain is not one of them. And so in Seattle, there's no sunshine in March. It's dreary and miserable all day long, every day. And so
mostly the gray weather.
Yeah.
Not so much the rain, but certainly the gray weather.
Yeah. And I think that really, that has an effect on people and their mental health all day long, every day in both cities. So in Seattle, of course, it has a negative effect, but here in Los Angeles it has a positive effect, and it makes there's an underlying optimism when the sun is shining all the time.
So do you find that people in Seattle are not as happy?
Yes. Really? Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they're nice, happy people, but I was one of them. And it's like, you just don't really realize what regular sunshine does to you and your mood.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
until it's gone.
Yeah, the doctors normally prescribe like sunshine, vitamin D to people.
Vitamin D, yeah.
Right.
But even then, it's an outlook of what's happening. Like you can be happy in Seattle, but then when you get to the sun, you realize, oh wow, this is a different situation.
Right.
So yeah, it's an optimism that is apparent and obvious, but I don't know if you a way to measure it. But yeah,
Yeah, I think it would be difficult to measure it, but I understand. I mean, there's a
yeah,
difference between being in a darker area and a lighter area. So we always gravitate towards the light because the light is,
right,
the way. So that's
exactly.
awesome. So tell me, you're a photographer.
I am a photographer. Yeah.
I'm going to, with your permission, post some of your photos in this video. I mean,
Oh,
I'm going to
please.
put them in there, but I think that would be really great. And so some of the things that you're doing, tell us what you're doing. Are you showing in any galleries, or are you running your own company, or?
So yeah, so I'm working on some fine art stuff. That is a um, that is something that I'm working on right now. I am really just hustling for work, is really like what I could say. Moving to a new city. As a photographer in Seattle, I was working a lot with companies doing content creation
Mm-hmm.
and more lifestyle kind of thing. When I was getting in that transition of moving, I started working with some interior designers and took a new look before moving here about what I loved about my work and the things that I was drawn to photograph when I wasn't working.
Mm.
And it was really, I've always loved this kind of form and shape and line. If you look at my work, really says a lot more about line and shape. And so after doing some really hard thinking about it, it's like, you know what I really love is photographing design spaces. So homes, working with interior designers, working with real estate professionals, working with architects, landscape architects, builders, that kind of thing. So that's what I do for my professional work. And I love it. And I used some time during our lockdown, COVID lockdown. I got my drone pilot's license.
Good.
So I'm FAA certified drone pilot. And so I started doing some aerial photography, which is super fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, so those are the things that I find that I really love. I went to my old creative partner in Seattle, recommended that I go speak to a friend of hers here who is a photo editor and has a lot of contacts. And she reviewed my portfolio and she asked me, she said, do you want to photograph celebrities and do those kinds of things? And I said, no, it's not really what I want to do. And she's like, good, because everybody that moves to Los Angeles wants to do that. And she said, you'll be fine.
So that she was setting you up.
Yeah, she was. And so she's like, good, do not do that, because there's those photographers are a dime a dozen in Los Angeles. And so the things that I really wanted to do, she said, you're going to have a lot more opportunity if you're shooting the things that you love. Number one, because you love it and you're just going to keep going, even on the days when you don't feel like it.
Right.
And number two, there's just more opportunity for the kind of photographer that wants to photograph more home and design and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so,
no, I think that's awesome. That's awesome. So
yeah,
hopefully you'll be getting a lot into that. And, as time progresses, we'd love to be able to see some more of your photographs.
Yeah, the one show that I had in Seattle, it was a series of works that was all all buildings that I photographed out in the middle of wintertime in Eastern Washington. And it was like, that was part of it too. It was like, gosh, this is what I go and I photograph these buildings in this little tiny town. And it's like, well, maybe I should focus on doing some more stuff like that. And so that's kind of also what drew me into doing this as the center of my work. And then
that's so great, because I think that when people really love what they do it better because they have a passion for it and they have an eye for it and they seek to grow in it and learn more, as opposed to just being a job,
Yes.
job that you don't like. So, wow, that sounds great. So, well, I'm really happy that you're now in Los Angeles.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for giving us the scoop and the inside.
Yeah, I want to say that I realize that there are probably people who have moved from Los Angeles to Seattle, and they have a lot of things that they love about that city. And I think that is due to the fact that everybody needs a change. And for me, my time in Seattle was wonderful. I have lifelong friends. Like I said, I raised my son there. It's always going to be home.
Right.
But I was ready for a change.
Mm-hmm.
And the city was never like, once you reach a point where you kind of outgrown the city, you have to go and move and do something else. And by staying,
yeah, and we have different stages in our lives, right?
Yes.
So whereas one area, one home could be fantastic for that particular stage. And I just met with a lady yesterday, and she just said, you know what? I'm 55 years old. I want to move to a community where there's not so much running around, not so much stress. We could be more relaxed in the way we look, in the way we act, in the way we speak. And I just want a slower lifestyle. So we're looking at different communities and even different states where she's going to be able to find that. So
it's so important. And like you said, the different stage of your life, and she's in this particular stage where she wants to kind of slow down. And I want to make sure that I'm clear that I love my home city of Seattle. It was time for me to change, and the things that were starting to drive me crazy are the things that are going to be exciting for the next person moving to the city.
Right. And so that's the thing. I mean, when you're, in maybe particular age group, I mean, that's fabulous. Like I remember being very young and being in Manhattan, and I absolutely adored it. I mean, there was this electric energy just through Manhattan and going up and down the subways, and what's my next project going to be, and my next job, and what's next on my list. And it was just really wonderful. And then that was a stage in my life, and now I'm in Rancho Palos Verdes, where I raised my children with my family. It's a slower way of life, but it's different. It's just a different stage, It
is.
So and it's not that one is better or worse than the other. It's just different. And it just depends on what we're looking for. So it's not that there are bad things about Seattle, bad things. I mean, we're going to find that wherever we are.
Absolutely.
But it's absolutely what we're looking for, what we're geared towards, and maybe what we want to not have so much of in our life. So I think that's probably what we're both looking at, right?
I hope so, because I just all of a sudden started to reflect on some of the things that I said, and I was like, okay, I don't want anyone to take away from that. It's a wonderful place to live. There's so much going on and good things going on.
Right. Yeah. And again, I mean, I do have a video on like some of the wonderful things about Seattle. So it's good. See both sides. See all sides, make a decision whether to stay or leave, maybe come to Los Angeles. And then, Los Angeles has, the same thing.
Same thing. Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about Los Angeles is there are a lot of little different neighborhoods where it could be completely different. I mean, I could go into one neighborhood and it's very mom and pop stores, old fashioned homes, just a very retro feel. And then there are other areas where you have your high rises and everything's very chic, and you've got all the restaurants and bars and everything. So very different. So, and that's why
you're absolutely right. Like going around town, even like one of my favorite things is Santee Alley downtown. There's almost nothing like that in the rest of the country. I mean, it's just such a unique place where all of these people are coming together, and it really reminds me more of some of the places in Asia that I've visited. And then you also have places like Rancho Palos Verdes. And they're in the same city. They're in the same area. And so you have very diverse groups of people and activities and communities. Yeah.
Okay, Brent, thank you so much. I'm going to have your contact information in the description. So for anybody who's interested in talking to you, meeting up with you, maybe getting some ideas, or maybe even hiring you to do some of their beautiful work in architecture and homes and lifestyle, that would be awesome. So thank you so much for joining me today.
And thank you for having me.
All right, Brent. Have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.